Hello, everyone. Welcome to tonight's family education event sponsored by Endeavor Schools. We are so glad that you are here. We know some of you don't know us all that well. You know your children's school really well, which is the most important thing. Endeavor is a network of now 101 schools. And about half of those schools are Montessori schools. So tonight we are going to be focusing on how you as Montessori families can help extend the work of the Montessori educators that your children get to spend time with and really create a beautiful Montessori environment right there in your home. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Dr. Amy Brereton, and I am Endeavor's Chief Academic Officer. But the stars of tonight's show are going to be Endeavor's Montessori team. So joining us this evening is Jana Morgan Herman, and she is Endeavor's Director of Montessori Education. She's actually a bit of a superstar in the Montessori world. When the position was open and we were interviewing for it, one of our Montessorians asked who would be taking the role, and I said, well, who would you want? And she said, I would want Jana Morgan Herman. So this individual was paying attention to Jana's podcasts and her books and was really inspired by her. And we were fortunate enough to be able to convince her to come and join us as our Chief Montessorian here at Endeavor. Also on this call is Jessica Ostrov. She's a regional director for Montessori education in Minnesota. So if you are at one of our Minnesota schools, I hope you get to spend some time with Jessica. I'm sure if you reach out to her, she'd be more than happy to spend time with you talking about all things Montessori. Also with us is Priya Rajagopalan. She is our regional director of Montessori education for the West Coast. She's another one who really knows Montessori backwards and forwards and inside out and has trained not just in the United States, but also internationally. So we have a really great Montessori team here for you tonight. We can talk infants all the way, trained all the way through elementary school. And if you want to talk adolescents, Jana's husband happens to be a trained adolescent Montessorian. So I'm thinking we're going to mostly be focusing on the young children, but we are here for you this evening. So we're going to spend close to an hour talking about Montessori at home, and then we'll have about a half hour. I'm sure they'd stay longer if you have more questions to see what we can do to support you, because we know that you are the children's first teacher. And it is so important that we do everything we can to support you in that role. There is at the bottom of your screen a little Q&A button that you can push. If you click on that, you're going to see a little place where you can type in your questions. Those questions will come through and I'll be able to see them. And then when Jana is done presenting, I can help facilitate answering those questions. Also, if you need anything during the session, please feel free to reach out. I'll be keeping an eye on that the entire evening. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Jana. And I am just so glad you all are going to have a real special hour and a half here learning from her. So off to you, Jana.
Thank you so much. And just to be very clear, Dr. Amy, it did not take much convincing at all. Everyone that I spoke to here was fantastic. And this is kind of like a dream come true to work for and alongside people whose goal is centered around high quality educational experiences. It's just unlike anything else that I've seen in the educational industry, and I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you all so much for coming. I know this is it's a school night, and that makes it really hard, and you've been so busy all day long with your little people too after school. So being able to spend time with you tonight is really important to me. I want to first speak to you about just being coming to you in the role of a parent and the parent experience. So let me share my screen really quickly. We'll start here. I do want to say that when Jessica Ostrov here from Minnesota, found out that I was working on adapting one of the Montessori in the home presentations that I'd given before, she was like, oh my goodness, I have one right here. I'll send it to you. And I looked through it and it was absolutely fantastic. And I thought, this is just perfect. It says everything that I would say. And I'm super excited to use that tonight. So I want to say thanks to her. I am a Montessori parent. I'll tell you a little bit about me as far as my parenting experience in Montessori goes. You can read about my professional experience in the link for this program, and I don't feel like I need to spend a lot of time on that. On the personal side, I want to say that Montessori experiences have been a huge part of my life. I came to Montessori and started working in Montessori schools and started my training in the very early 90s. I started my Montessori training in 1992 when I was a really young parent. And I had two children who went through Montessori from 18 months through high school. So they only attended Montessori school. Their grandmother has owned a Montessori school for 45 years. It's an AMS accredited school. Their father is a Montessori teacher. My husband is a Montessori secondary teacher. My sister is a Montessori elementary teacher, 6 to 12, and she's taught in both of those. I'm 3 to 6. My specialty is 3 to 6. And my oldest daughter is an infant toddler house director, and she's also right trained. So this Montessori is a lot of what we talk about. My two grandchildren attend, or three grandchildren now, attend Montessori school as well. So I've been on all sides of the equation. I've been a mom or a parent in Montessori. I've been the teacher. I've been a head of school. And I am now a grandmother in a Montessori with Montessori children. And it is a very unique experience. So we will have questions at the end. And because you never know, hopefully I'll cover almost everything during the course of tonight's talk. And if not, then that'll be the perfect time for you to drop that in the chat for me. So we're going to talk about supporting Montessori in the home. And I want you to keep in mind that Montessori school is not home. And there are so many things that you don't need to do. One of the things that I love to do is talk about and learn and read and study and refer to Montessori's text. And so it's one of my hobbies, in addition to my profession, is to read what Montessori says and take it to heart. Montessori, when she is talking to parents, you never hear her mention materials. You never hear her mention anything that has to do with the things that you will find in a school. She never mentions parents teaching their children to read. She never mentions their parents teaching them in any way that looks like school. She focuses on relationships and experiences and the balance between independence and interdependence, and how our role as parents is to provide our children with the independence to do the things that they can do for themselves and the ability to contribute at home, so that people are, excited, that children feel good that they can do things. Adults feel great that children can also contribute, and to share with them your cultural beliefs, your practices, having experiences by reading to children, eating food with them, and making sure that they have time to play and sleep is perfect. We're going to focus tonight, just for the sake of this talk, on how you can prepare the things around your house and speak a little bit about philosophy. We've had our introductions. Now we're going to move into the key principles. Then we'll talk about the physical preparation of the home, the psychological preparation of the home, and then we'll have time for questions. So what we're thinking about at home is supporting independence. And at schools, or when you go to school, or it's very common in traditional programs or traditional ways that parents engage with children, is that they do things for their parents, and that's the way that they show love. So sometimes when you come to a Montessori school and children are doing all of these things independently, it seems maybe a little cold or hands off. And it's actually not. We're actually providing them these opportunities to do the things that they really want to be able to do for themselves, because they're looking to the adults in their lives all the time. They see what those adults can do, and they want to do it. We see this as early as very young children in the toddler years, when they say, no, me do it, or no. And they're expressing to you a boundary. And maybe it's not the most gracefully conveyed boundary, but they are letting you know that they want to do things. All people want autonomy, and really young children are no different. There are some ways that we can provide these opportunities to develop independence for them. They do that all day long at school, and we'll talk about some simple ways you can do it at home. Dr. Montessori said, if we observe natural development with sufficient care, we see that it can be defined as the gaining of successive levels of independence. We know that when we do things for a child, we can do it so quickly and so easily, and it would save a bunch of time. And that when children do it, it makes us take longer. We have to start earlier when we're going to go through some process, and that it might not turn out the way that we would expect. We see this oftentimes with children trying to put on their clothes, especially their shoes, and they're not bothered that the shoes are on the wrong feet. And I know some people worry that that might hurt their feet, but I'll just let you know that it doesn't. Foot binding is very different from children having their shoes on the wrong feet. And what they get out of being able to put their shoes on by themselves far outweighs the need for us to point out to them that their shoes are on the wrong feet. However, if we can see that they might be a little bit uncomfortable, we might probe a little bit and say, is something about your shoes bothering you? And if they are indicating that it is, you can say, oh my goodness, let me show you something. Can I show you something? And you can show them then, some kind of trick that they can find where if you put the shoes together, there's a little opening in the center. Some people put little marks on them. You can show them ways, and that's what we call a point of interest, which we'll talk about later, which can help them to be more independent the next time. Our impulses are to do for children, as we talked about, and we know that they can do them for themselves. And we sometimes have safety as the center of our concerns, but when we slow down and if we prepare the environment in a way that makes sure that everything that is available to that child is safe, we can kind of hang back. We're going to be around, we're going to be in proximity, but we're going to wait and watch and see what happens. And oftentimes what we see over time is that children are able to do things for themselves. They need us to be present. They might need us to step in and give just the minimal amount of help. One example that I think of is putting on socks by yourself, or and try to get the sock over your heel. And so if you see that they're struggling with that, you might say, I can show you one little thing, stick just one finger in and go over their heel, and that will help them be successful. Another time that I often see this with very young children is where they're pulling their underwear up and it doesn't go over their bottom in the back, it gets stuck. And so being able to point out and say, oh my goodness, I have to reach back and pull it up from the back too. So my underwear will come all the way up, or so your underwear will come all the way up. Little cues that they're still doing things successfully. We're not stepping in and doing for them, but we're giving just enough information at the time when they need it so that they can do it for themselves, and then they feel really successful after that. We want to help children do it for themselves. This is what we see. This is what children crave. When you see children imitating the things that you do, one of my favorites is to watch how children imitate their families doing, or their caregivers or families doing something at home, like washing dishes, and they go through the steps really fast. They can kind of approximate what's happening, but because we go so fast in our daily lives, they're only approximating our moves. And the same thing is when you can see when they are pretend dialing a phone and they just kind of poke at it and then hold it up. They know that we're doing something there, but they don't know that there are certain numbers that we're calling. There's a certain order they go in and all the details around that. With that and everything else, if we just slow down and break down those processes, they're going to get it. So we want to make sure that the child is a participant in home life, because we know that the young child loves to work side by side with you. And for some of us, we might not be used to that. It might be a different experience for us, and it might even be kind of frustrating depending on what our own experiences were in childhood, whether we were welcomed as a co-participant or whether or not people got annoyed if we tried to step in and help. We might carry those feelings on in our experiences with children. But children do love to work side by side with you to whatever level or capacity they can. We want to try to provide that opportunity. They love to be helpful and imitate, and they learn by doing. There are many children, most children in our experience can learn if we just slow down. They will pick up what we are doing. We just have to think about and kind of break down in our minds, what are the essential points of this process that I'm engaging in? And is there anything that I need to verbalize about this process? We usually try not to use words with really young children because they'll look away from our hands and they'll look to our mouths. Don't get me wrong, we use a lot of language, But when we are showing a lesson on something or showing how to engage in a process, we want their eyes focused on our hands. And if we have to say something, we'll use very brief, targeted language to express a point of interest. As parents, we want to make sure that we provide child-sized tools and furniture and to remove obstacles from participation. Children need chairs that when they're sitting down, they can put their feet on the floor. They need bars in the closet or drawers that they're able to open by themselves. The bars in the closet can be lower, and you can get a spring rod. You don't have to have fancy tools. You can just get a spring closet rod or shower rod and put it low in the closet so that the child would be able to hang things up by themselves. When we find utensils or peelers, a great resource for this, by the way, is the Small Hands Catalog from Montessori Services. They have so many wonderful things. I would suggest that if you are people who share gifts to each other or give gifts over the course of the year for whatever reason, that you check out Montessori Services. The things in there, many of them your child will have seen, and you can talk with your child's teacher about the things that they might be ready for when you have a conference. We want to seek out and embrace these opportunities for the child to be able to do the thing, whatever it is. There's no reason that my own children were helping do their own laundry from the time that they could reach the door to the dryer. And if you have stools, which we'll show you some examples of that later, there's no reason they can't push stool ups and help with dishes, brushing their own teeth, washing clothes, anything that you can think of, a child can play a part in. We just have to think about how to set it up. Here you can see this child is watering plants, and that's always something that children love to do. And water is pretty magical, right? And we want to prioritize reliable routines. Oftentimes, we see that frustration can arise when we don't have routines or when we're inconsistent. One of the things that Montessori especially focused on was this innate sense of order that children have, and that when things are predictable, and we know this too from attachment theories, when things are predictable and children know what's going to happen, this kind of opens them up to exploring and taking what they see as a safe risk. When we prioritize routines, we don't have to have a schedule. It doesn't have to be tied to times necessarily, because time is so arbitrary. It can be tied to when we get up, we do this. We put on our clothes that we picked out the night before. We go have breakfast. We brush our hair and our teeth, and we put on our shoes, get our lunchbox, and we're ready to go. So think about routines that need to happen. And if you feel like there's a time crunch, in the way that it's working now, you just need to back it up 15 minutes. At some point, you'll reach a place where it's comfortable. And as Jonathan Wolf says, we need to sometimes enlarge our circle of expectation and be calm and focused on letting the thing unfold, unless we don't have a choice, right? So sometimes we're going to have to say, you're going to have to make an executive decision about when you get in the car. And we have to balance liberty and freedom. But as far as tasks go, we can offer children the opportunity to take care of as much of that as they can. And we do that by making sure that we prepare as much of the environment as we can so that those children can be successful doing that. Showing children how to do things, we want to show with actions and minimize words. Slow down to the child's pace. This might feel painfully slow to you, but just think about if you went to someone and you needed help with a task that you'd never seen before. So it might be, depending on what you're comfortable with, if it might be gardening that you're not comfortable with, or it might be, changing the oil in your car. A person who can do that really well is going to do it quickly. You might need them to slow down, I would say, so that you could see all those individual steps. That's what we have to do with children. And I think when somebody is showing me how to do something on the computer, that is when I am keenly aware of how fast people can do that, who it comes to naturally and easily. And I think when we reframe it and think, okay, it's not painfully slow. It is slow enough so that the child can see the activity. But if the child is looking away or not interested, then you're probably going too slow. It might need to speed it up just a little bit. And as I said before, show those points of interest that can help the child understand probably the hardest or trickiest parts that they might be missing. One of the things that we see often is when children are using a dustpan or floor brush and a dustpan, They don't put the lip of the dustpan down all the way to the floor. They set it on the floor, but they're kind of pushing on the handle. And so the dust or debris goes right underneath the dustpan. So a point of interest for that is to show that you are putting that along the floor. And then you might even say, sports casting, I have to make sure that I put the lip of this dustpan directly on the floor so that the debris can go right into it. Those are the kinds of things that would be points of interest. We're going to return and talk a little bit more about this idea of order in spaces and routines. Montessori said the child often feels the deepest impulse to bring order to what, according to his logic, is in a state of confusion. We have all seen children lay things out in a certain order. You've probably seen a child at some point lay out all of their toys in order, put all of their stuffed animals in order, put their shoes in order. And their order might be different from us, but that sense of order is built into children. So as often as we can keep things simple, consistent, and in order, we are going to make space for them to have develop those experiences on their own more consistently and successfully. She said the child's need for order is one of the most powerful incentives to dominate his life. And we see this in the classroom, and you've probably seen this in your life too. If somebody new or different comes into the classroom, it is a disruption. Children are can be very anxious about that or curious about it, and they want to know what it is. That's something very different for them. I don't know that you know this if you're not in a classroom, but picture day can be quite a challenge. They know something's coming, and it has disturbed their sense of order and consistency. And so we try to have in Montessori classrooms, we try to have as little of that as possible. This is why many schools don't have additional celebrations or change their schedule during holidays, because children are already going to have those experiences at home. Culturally, it's a big deal. And some children, being in a classroom, for example, can be the most consistent place possible. For you, when you are traveling during holidays, you can maintain the sense of order and consistency and routine no matter where you are. So you can let them know that even though we're going to go to grandma's house, we are still going to eat our dinner, we'll take a walk, we'll take a bath, we'll read books, and then we'll go to bed. So keeping it as much the same as possible when you are at home is going to help them as well. For the physical preparation of the home, we want to think about the areas where we can do that. So we see the kitchen and entryway are great places for where we can modify what is available for children. That the dining room might need some adjustments, living and family room, of course, the bedroom, bathroom, and then outdoors. These are all spaces that can be modified to help children develop independence. Let me go here. All right, so in the kitchen, we want to make it child-friendly. As often as possible, we want to provide a way for the child to reach the sink independently. So that might be a stool. It might be, if you don't have room, if you're in an apartment where you don't have room to buy, one of these fancy dedicated contraptions or stairs to push up to a sink, just turn a chair around up to the sink so that children can stand on the chair. That is perfectly fine. Whatever is working and safe. They want to work next to you at the counter, and then they can help gather things for cooking. For example, you could say, okay, we are going to cook whatever thing. That what we need to be able to do that is this. We need a pan. Can you get the large pot with a handle out from under the cabinet and bring it to the sink? So one thing at a time, telling them what we need to gather, and then you walk through those things, those processes beside them and alongside them. Create spaces to work, play, eat snacks. A child-sized table and chair, or a safe, easy access to a booster seat at the family table is fantastic. I would also suggest that if it is not something that happens in your house, that you might want to consider having the kind of space where you eat in the kitchen. This is going to minimize spills. It also, when you're eating in the kitchen, you're less likely to, when you're not watching TV or engaged in media, you're less likely to eat when you're not hungry, and you're more likely to engage in conversation with your children. And that is one of the best things you can do for children when they are growing up, is to try to eat a meal with them every day. It doesn't have to be dinner. It could be breakfast, depending on what shift you work, but eating with them is so important. And so keeping those experiences in the kitchen, when children are cooking, they are more likely to eat it. When they are spending time with their family, they're more likely to do it. And experiences with their families are the things that they love more than anything else in the world. Not to mention that you get to share so much about your culture and your family's beliefs and how to treat each other when you're having conversations in the kitchen. Here's some example of stools and towers. But remember, if this is not something that you have space for in your house, a kitchen chair that you put some felt on the bottom, and then children can push those over to the counter and stand up and work. It's just fine. That's going to be great too. Kitchen tables and chairs, I would say these are great examples. You can also find a very reasonably priced set from IKEA. I think it's about $30 for a table and 2 chairs. This is not going to be a piece of furniture that you pass down for generations. It's meant to get you through childhood. And what I like about it is that it's very easy to cut the legs of these chairs down for younger children, and then you can get another one later for when your child is a little older and a little taller. But that way the child is not sitting with the table coming up too high, and they're able to sit at a table and it actually is a workspace. They can be really lightweight and out of the way, and they might serve other purposes as the child grows. They could also be like a side table for a bed later. Having access to child-sized dishes is important. You don't need to have everything in your kitchen available. Just a small drawer, bottom cabinet or drawer, where a child might have a plate, a bowl, silverware, and a few kinds of glasses would be perfect. It doesn't have to take up much space. And you could also, even depending on, how your kitchen is set up, you might have a little basket in there that has like a child-sized peeler, child-sized spreader, child-sized cutting board, child-sized rolling pin, any of those things too, if you don't have room for that with the adult ones that you keep and use yourself. So you just be creative. I guarantee you whatever you have will work. And if you have questions about that and you're in, you can speak with Priya and ask Priya for ideas, or ask Jessica for ideas, because all of us have been doing this for a long time, and we would be happy to share those ideas with you. Kitchen utensils and tools. We talked a little bit about this already. Silverware, a blunt knife for spreading. Children really do learn how to use these very carefully. A vegetable chopper. I don't know. Can you see my cursor moving around? This is a very accessible piece that can be used in a variety of ways. Children put their one hand on this green part and they put their other hand on top of it like this. And so that when they push down, they're very sure not to have their fingers near the blades. Most of these, or variations of these, are going to be available through Montessori services, and they're wonderful. A toaster oven. I know it sounds scary, but children really do use toaster ovens at school. Of course, they're not like, when they are ready. They're not doing it without oversight and with a bunch of support, but baking is a really easy and fun thing that children can do. And a toaster oven is the perfect way to work with children with baking. The doors are such that they can open and close them easily. They can have access to them in a way where they're not going to be bending over into a big hot space where they could be burned or hurt. Toaster ovens are perfect for small baking projects that children can use. They learn how to follow a recipe in sequence. And of course, we know that that's mathematics, learning about heat and safety and how to clean up. It's also full of language because you are describing that sequence and that process while you are doing it. Cooking is an amazing activity to develop not just, the emotional and social connections that go along with cooking, but academic skills as well. Having access to water is an important thing. One of the things that parents worry about is that the children will just leave the water running. One of the tricks that I learned when my children were really young, actually from Montessori training, is that you just go under the sink in the bathroom, for example, and turn the knob so that the water just comes out in a trickle. And things like that can be helpful. You can do that in your kitchen as well. We talked a little bit about food prep and cooking. These are all great ideas. You're going to see something coming up where you have more ideas about those kinds of things. So cleaning up is a really important process. And I just, so you know, I was so excited because Melissa and Doug came out with a wooden handled set for cleaning that I bought this week because it was wooden handled, but it's too small for a 3-year-old. So my granddaughter, I take her to school in the morning, and her and my oldest grandson to school in the morning, and I had her try it out and it doesn't work. So you want to get high quality ones, but the easiest thing to do is just get an adult one and adjust it. If you can, the ones from Montessori Services will work. If you can't do that, you can just adapt what you have. I know that if you use Swiffers, you don't have to keep replacing rags. You can just use a washcloth and poke that in the little openings on the top. And then you just take one of the sections out of the Swiffer and there you go. That works. And then they take it off, they put it in the washer, and that's an easy way to help clean up the floor. We want to create a culture where there are no chores. Cleaning up is a part of your existence in a household, and I wouldn't tie money to it, and I wouldn't call them chores or act like there's something that I don't want to do. We all clean up because we all live in the house. We all pitch in and do what we do because we live in the house. We make messes, so we clean up. And that's just something that everybody does together. It's part of being a family. It's part of being a person who has to take care of themselves. So you don't need to do any stickers or rewards for this. And that's why we're talking about reframing that chore narrative. It's like, these are the things that have to be done in our house, and we can take turns doing them. That's fine. But let's talk about all of the things that need to be done, and then we can decide who's going to do those. And if it's not something that you feel like you can choose, I can help choose it for you. That's okay. We want to seek and embrace opportunities for children to be participants, meaningful participants. This empowers them. It helps them understand the importance of interdependence, where everybody has to do their part, and it prepares them to do things on their own independently and be competent and feel good about that. This would be something we don't have homework in Montessori, because the work at home in and of itself is important. They are getting language, culture, math. They are understanding and developing themselves as human beings, and they see why they matter. That is, work is life. Life is work. Just being a human on this planet is an important task. For the entryway, you might want to have a place for shoes, for coats. You might want to have a chair or bench to sit on while putting on shoes. And it can be extra helpful if you have a dustpan and a brush for sweeping up any sand or wood chips or dirt that happens by the door. And if not, if you don't have space for that, you can always bring it from the kitchen. But it is a great thing to consider, that children will need to sit down to put on their shoes, and they will need a place to hang up their coats. And this, if you can do that by the entrance to your house, that's going to help keep your floors cleaner anyway. So win-win. For the dining room, we think about participating in family life and how there are opportunities at every single meal for children to practice one-to-one correspondence, because each person gets a plate, each person gets a spoon, each person gets a fork, each person gets a napkin. And so they are matching one object to one person. And that is a fantastic skill. They also, depending on how many people are in your family, they're doing, one-to-one correspondence as far as like matching a number to an object, but they are also learning the language of those things. And they can add those up. So let's think together, how many spoons do we need if it's going to be you, me, and mommy tonight? Let's see, you, me, and mommy. That's 1, 2, 3. We need 3 spoons. And if they can go and count that, they can. So it offers a myriad of opportunities, and it's an easy way to do that. And then all of the skills that they've been practicing at school is a great thing to see at the dining room. And you get to learn about your culture and how your family eats. and what is important to you as a part of that process. Depending on where you live in the world, you're going to use different utensils. You might draw the spoon toward you, or you might move it away from you. You never know. So children can learn these particular things from their families, and they get to see what's important to their family. They are practicing grace and courtesy at meals. So providing child-sized silverware, plates, and glasses is important because then they're able to manage them without spilling them. You can show them how to use and hold silverware. This is not to say that we are going to be badgering them. They're not going to be 40 and holding the spoon like they do when they're 2 years old. They're going to figure it out. So it's not something that we need to think about correcting. We can model, and then also if we see that they are struggling with something, we can say, I think I know a way that might be a little easier. Watch how I hold my spoon, or whatever. And we can expect that peace and kindness are normal. We want to show them how to ask for more, how to ask to be excused, what needs to happen when they have finished with their plates. There's no reason. Toddlers at schools clean up after themselves at lunch. So everybody can learn how to scrape their plate. Everybody can take their dish to the sink or the dishwasher. And that's just part of their responsibility. It's part of eating, is cleaning up. And then we want to allow and expect children to clear their own. Oh yeah, we just talked about that. Thank you. Okay, dining room seating options. We want them to be able to sit at a height where the table is not too tall. We don't want it to be, to armpits. We want it to be kind of mid belly. So that they are able to use those utensils well, and so they can lean over the table a little bit, so that they're going to be less likely to get food on their clothes or on the floor. And again, there are so many options for this that are simple and easy. And I've even seen some people bring in a car seat, like they didn't have space for an extra one, but they had one of those booster car seats that they brought in that kind of sit on top of the seat, and they put those on the chair too. Sky's the limit with that. All right, in the living room, we want to incorporate children's things and spaces into what you already have. Your children do not need a playroom. You may have one, and if it's working for you, great. But sometimes people notice that their children don't use their playrooms, or their playrooms are kind of a mess and they're in the other end of the house and their children are playing in the living room. That's because children want to be with the people that they love. Also, there's a bonus in that if those children are around you, then you're going to be hearing how they're talking to each other, what they're saying to each other. Even if you're not engaged in that moment, you kind of get an understanding of what they're working on. Children are a part of the family, and so having their things in the spaces that you all share is a welcoming feeling. They feel like they are a part of it. So you can just build it right in to what you're doing. This experience for your children is more important than decor. This period of time in your child's life will pass quickly. You will wish one day that you were able to spend more time with those little children in your living room. And so don't think about how it might impose. Just think, how can we enlarge in our circle of expectation? How can we make a space where everyone is welcome? This is everyone's house and space. If it is a problem because you have thought about the issues that come with cleaning up, guess what? In Montessori schools, everybody cleans up. So they know that process, and you can incorporate some of those things at home too. Taking any shelves that you have and using the bottom 1 or 2 shelves is a perfect way to incorporate those the activities that children use at home into your space. I would highly recommend against a toy box, and instead you might have 3 baskets on each shelf with things that they are playing with. When they stop playing with those things, then you can move those out of rotation and move something else in. You don't have to have a lot of toys, but if you have activities that children love and that they continue to engage in that really offer them things, then they are going to go back to those over and over again. And research shows that if we have more than about 6 things to choose from, we kind of throw up our hands anyway, and we're less engaged with it. So limiting those choices, putting it on a couple of shelves, setting it up in a way that they're familiar with seeing at school, which is when you take something from the shelf, you either put it on a rug or a table. The rug shows everybody that's your work, and it protects that work from being stepped on. And then when you're finished, it goes back on the shelf and the rug gets rolled up. And then the same with working at a table. You can get anything, you can use whatever you want. When you're finished, it goes back in the basket, back on the shelf, and it's ready for the next person. Having a space where things go is really important. And then what I would do is when I was home a lot by myself with my children when they were little, a lot, like my partner would travel for 6 to 8 weeks overseas. And so I would be on my own, and I just would have a 10-minute tidy. If there was anything left out after they had put their work away or something, nobody remembered whose it was, then we would just have a 10-minute tidy where I'd set a timer and we clean up everything in 10 minutes. And we looked at it as kind of a fun thing, as a game, when we had to do it. And that was great. You can have a shelf that or create art experiences very simply. You don't have to have a lot of things. You don't have to have coloring books. You don't have to have, if the more that we can allow free expression and opportunities, the better it's going to be for children. We want to start very simple, and we want to start with things that are easy to manage and clean up. And I am about to free you from something. You do not have to keep everything your child makes at school or in art. You don't have to. If you start off saying, oh my goodness, thank you for showing me that. Would you like to recycle it, or do you want to put it on this board for a few days? And then you are not a bad parent if you do not keep all of your child's artwork. It is okay. They are interested in the process. They will continue to bring us things if the time that we communicate about them is to say, it's good job, it's so beautiful, I'm going to keep that, then they feel like that's the way to stay engaged with you. But if you can shift conversations to say, oh my goodness, I see what you did there. There are so many primary colors. Or tell me the story of your drawing. Oh my goodness, tell me more about that. Then the process is the thing that is important, and it's not praise for an outcome. It's the process that matters, and they are not attached to those papers. If they are attached, it's generally a habit that they've developed, and we can develop it right out too. Because the process of art and creativity is what we want them to have experiences about. You only need, if you were going to have these out, you would only have 1 or 2 activities to start, and then you might have 3, maybe at most, if you're doing it at home. And you don't have to worry that you have to change these out all the time. Children like crayons. Children like scissors. And having just a little opportunity for them to do that, and maybe some paint or hole punching, is great. In the bedroom, it's the same thing. You want to make this entire room a safe space where children can sleep. If your this floor bed that's in this picture is just absolutely fantastic, and children can move into that at a very young age. And then they're able to sleep in that bed for a long time. They can get into and out of it by themselves. It's not a far drop to the floor. It is super safe, and it allows them a lot of independence in their room. You will see a lot of super fancy things on Pinterest that you absolutely do not need to do at all. In fact, many things that we see on Pinterest are not developmentally appropriate for children, but they are stunningly gorgeous, and parents are attached to them. You can have a very simple space, and you can still, my children chose to share a room all the way until my youngest daughter went to college. They just wanted to. They each had their own room, and they wanted to share a room. And you can make those have zones as well. So here you can see there's a zone for sleeping. The books are right near the bed. You have blocks that are on the floor. You don't need a toy box. See here how there are just 6 objects on this shelf, and children can work with those and then put them away. And you have this low closet organizer. Again, you don't have to buy anything special. You can take whatever you have and make it work. Same thing here. It's just a small shelf. This is something I know Walmart has a faux wood one, looks like wood, but it's not, for about $50, that has there's one that has 4 cubbies and one that has 8. That's perfect. Get you some baskets from Goodwill. You don't need to buy anything fancy, and that can be where children keep their things. Less is more. And you rotate books and toys to keep things interesting. And, as far as books go, it is fantastic to go to your library and check things out. An experience that you get to do with your child where they get to spend time. You want children, you don't need to teach your children to read. You want to have your child connect reading with love. You want them to think about being snuggled up next to you when they see books, and not having anxiety about whether or not they're going to be quizzed on their reading. We can pretty much much child now at about age 4 who is going to have that now we can see indications when a child is going to struggle with reading. And it's especially important for those children that they just hear the adults in their lives reading to them. That is a fantastic ritual that's socially and emotionally beneficial and academically beneficial. Bathroom and safety first. Non-slip stools are great. A little plastic one that they can move from the kitchen would also be fine. You don't have to have all of those. And you want to have everything that is accessible. These little, if you have a child who is learning to go to the bathroom independently and they're not able to sit on the toilet by themselves, this is a perfect little setup for them where they can work on cleaning up as well. So these are great options. And then, of course, going through the process of learning those rituals of brushing your teeth, washing your face, and brushing your hair are very simple rituals that children can do every day. And it shows them, when we're getting ready to go out, we are going to bring our best selves. And that's not fancy clothes and, spending a lot of time on hair and makeup. That is, we have thought about the fact that we are going to be engaging with other people. And so we are going to brush our teeth, wash our face, and comb our hair or brush our hair. Easy to set up, and children love to practice it. If you have a child with long hair, I always had really long hair growing up. And if you haven't had long hair, then it's important to learn how to brush long hair. With long hair, you want to start at the very bottom and move your way up slowly. If you start at the top and go down, the tangles just get all here and it's kind of a nightmare. So if you have a child and you're showing them how to brush their hair in a way that's going to be more comfortable for them, you say, one of the things that I learned about it is start at the bottom and move up. Caring for pets and plants is a great way for children to feel important and connected to their household. It allows children the opportunity to nurture, and it shows that you trust them. You want to provide child-sized things that actually work. Some of the child-sized tools, for example, bend when you push on them. So you want to get as nice as you can afford that are high quality. And then to support children as they grow into the task of feeding pets, you can pre-measure pet food if you feel like you need to. If you don't have a measuring cup that you keep in your pet food, if it's dry or if they're not pre-measured, then you could go through the step of, you could sit together and say, okay, we're going to put together our pet's food for the week. We're going to put them each in these reusable bags. And then when it's time to feed the pet, you just go get the bag you need. Same for gardening. Having tools that work, they love to work alongside you. And I'm just going to let you know that in Montessori's schedule of the day, the one that she gave in training for 30 years, the entire second half of the day, everything after lunch was outside. There was free play. There was an hour for free play, an hour for guided activities and games. There was an hour for gardening, and there was time for using clay and building, constructing things outside. And then they had more free play, and then they went home. So, and we know the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends 90 to 120 minutes per day of outdoor unstructured playtime. So you can't get enough of that. So gardening is a really important and wonderful thing that you can do with your child. It's a stress reliever. We know that spending time outside is good for your physical, mental, and emotional growth and development, and theirs too. And it sets a great example. Same thing in winter. There is no there's no bad weather, only wrong clothes. My children go to a Montessori outdoor field school, so they are outside all the time in all kinds of weather. They're outside when it's raining, they're outside in the cold. And so we are so used to living in temperature controlled lives that sometimes we're a little bit uncomfortable. But I promise you, if you just spend time outside in all kinds of weather, you will acclimate to that. And as long as there's not a health advisory, we suggest that you do that. And if you live in northern areas, by the way, or you live in areas where it gets really cold, that is a whole thing in and of itself, is learning how to dress appropriately for cold weather. So it's not just, it's not just practical, it's important. You want to have this, Montessori believed that when children were little, if we could connect them with nature, then it would be something that they wanted to take care of when they were older. So instead of looking at insects as things that are scary or gross, if you can kind of shift your mindset and start seeing them as these magical creatures that you can find out more about and how everything on the planet plays an important role on the planet, that's great. And when children spend time outdoors, we know that they are nurtured fully and completely in all aspects of their lives. So, is your home set up so that children can do these things independently? Can they get a drink of water by themselves? Do they know how to clean up a mess? And that could be a washcloth and a bucket. Do they know how to wash and dry their hands, care for the plants and pets in your house? Do they know how to choose and put on their clothes? And by the way, if you struggle with there being too many choices, then you can pick out 3 things and your child can choose from among those. Or if that's overwhelming, you could pick out 2 things. Would you like to wear this tomorrow or this tomorrow? So everything's picked out the night before, and then the next day, you don't have those struggles. The child has already picked it out the night before, so all they have to do is get up and put it on. Are they able to practice snapping, zipping, buttoning, buckling? Check to see that your child can pull up and take down their pants by themselves. At home, you're able to help them. You've probably been supporting them in this and being able to wipe themselves, take on and off their clothes. But in a classroom, there are a lot of children, and a child needs to have you kind of start walking them through how to do that. You don't want leggings are often too tight for children to be able to pull up and down by themselves. So they might need something that's a little bit looser so that they can independently go to the restroom. And if it has snaps, that's really hard for them. Buttons, oh my goodness, that's really hard for them. So think about what they're putting on and if they're able to independently take care of their personal needs. Additionally, we don't want to send them to school in anything that is so sacred that you would be upset if it got cut by scissors or dirty or got paint on it. So we just simple and practical, and nothing needs to be fancy. Can they creatively play? Are they able to explore and play freely without it being directed? You really don't have to have structured activities for your child. They can just play. You don't have to put them in soccer. They can just play. If your child is passionate about something, then fantastic. That's awesome if that's something that you want to do with your child. But your child is going to be an amazing human if you don't enroll them in anything. It's them being amazing and them being an important person doesn't have to do with that. Again, if your child has a passion for something and they want to do it, then by all means do it. But your child is going to be well served by coming home, spending time with you after a long day. They help you make dinner, they help you clean up, you do your bath, you do your books, you pick out your clothes for the next day. All of those routines happen at night. Then they go to bed at 8 o'clock. You have 2 or 3 hours by yourself for adult time. And then you each get the sleep you need, so you're ready for the next day. So how do we best support our children's growth and development? So we talked about love, sleep, good food, exercise. There are other areas that we can focus on. So the development of concentration is something that is essential, and it's a key aspect of what we do in the Montessori classroom, and you can do this at home very easily. So when we see that a child is concentrating, and you know that's a concentration face on that child's face, it often looks like this too. Those are also concentration faces. You know the ones that you hope nobody takes a picture of you making. That is a child who is focused on an activity, and we are not going to interrupt that unless it's an emergency. We don't need to comment on it. We don't need to say anything. We don't even need to say, oh my goodness, I love that, or good job, or oh wow. We don't need to comment. When a child is concentrating, we can just watch from a distance and respect that concentrated activity. And this includes babies and toddlers. Babies are learning to concentrate when they get to the stage where they have what's called hand regard, when they're really fascinated with their own hands. That is a form of concentration too. So concentration happens in an early age, and we want to protect it. We want to observe before we intervene and ask, can this wait? Let's see what happens if I wait. Unless, of course, it's something that's dangerous, then you step in immediately. We want to focus on the process over the product, and we talked a little bit about this before. We want to celebrate and enjoy the process and let go of the product. These will be the times that are so special. And if it's messy, so what? One of the parts of making a mess is cleaning it up. We're not going to stress about that. If you are engaged in an activity that they are enjoying the process, then we can just value that for what it is. They are repeating, something is fascinating them, something is holding their attention, and that's what we want to focus on. It's all about the destination. I mean, it's not about the destination, it's all about the journey. So focusing on the steps that this child is developing, or the skills that this child is developing in all of these steps along the way, is amazing. Adults tend to want minimum effort and quick, short, and simple ways to do things, and children will engage in maximum effort. They want to move the biggest, heaviest thing across the room. They want to carry the thing that is really heavy when you're outside. They like to do maximum effort, and they like to repeat it over and over again. They want to do that. That is how they construct themselves. It is important that we allow a child to struggle within reason. When we see that they're struggling, that gives us bits of information so that when we're observing, that we might come back later and point out something that's a little tricky. Putting on a zipper, putting the zipper parts together can be really tricky. And so noticing what part it is, and then being able to say, when I'm going to zip up my zipper, I have to hold the two ends together while I pull the zipper. And just that little bit the next day, or when they're so frustrated and they ask you to help, gives them the information that they know they can add to the steps next time to be successful. We want you to enjoy your time together. It is fleeting. And it's really important that you're not super stressed about it. Your children are going to be great. You're involved people. You're adults who care about what happens to your child, and you love them. And you have put them in environments where they're going to be learning just by existing in Montessori schools. So that's all taken care of. You can build on those skills by talking to your child's teacher about what you see. And when you have a conference, I don't know when your conferences are, they're at different times at different schools, you can ask your teacher for ideas that they can work on with their child. Like, what is my child doing in the practical life area? Do you have some ideas of things that we could cook or do or engage in at home that would be in alignment? Or can you show me how, can you refer to me to something that shows me how you roll the rugs, or do some activity in the room that you've heard your child talk about? Read the notes home from schools and teachers so that you can stay abreast of what topics are happening, and you can incorporate that into the books you get from the library or any community adventures that you take. Here's what I want you to know, that research shows that the absolute best thing that you can do for your children, well, there's 4 of them. You can eat with them regularly. You can make sure that they get enough time to play, unstructured free play. And when I say play, I don't mean soccer practice. I mean unstructured free play, where the child is deciding what they do. You can make sure that they get enough sleep. And when you are doing when you are doing these things, the other thing that I would add to that is reading. Read to your child every day. Books that talk about all kinds of things. Those books allow you access into situation and stories so that children see people who are like them. They see people who are different from them, and they can have conversations with you. We know that younger ages, we usually want to focus on real things, and then fantasy we focus on more if children are interested when they move into that elementary age. But those 4 things, eating together, making sure they get enough play, reading to them every day, and making sure that they get enough sleep, those are the elements for success and having children achieve the highest outcomes that are possible. So you don't have to sweat. None of that costs anything. That is all just part of living together as a family. So if you just kind of settle in to those experiences, reach out to us if now I'll make time now for us to have questions. And I have developed a list of resources to send to you. And so I think maybe I can have, we can send those to the school leaders, so they'll have ideas that are specifically for you. People that you can go and follow, like Simone Davies, she focuses on infants and toddlers. Britt Hawthorne talks about how to speak with children in age-appropriate ways about diversity, and then a number of Montessori references that you can look for as well. And I'll stop there. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jana. This has been fantastic. And I have to tell you, we have had a lively Q&A going on over here with our other Montessorians on the call helping tackle some of these questions. So if you have questions for Jana, go ahead and pop them into that Q&A chat and we will have her answer them. One of the questions that was asked and answered, I think would be beneficial for everyone to hear the answer to. So Danny was asking about teeth brushing because she wants to respect, sounds like, the child brushing their teeth, but is of course worried about dental hygiene. So Jessica, do you want to quickly share your answer to that question?
Sure. I said, in the beginning, you can say to the child, I'm going to have a turn brushing your teeth, and then you can have a turn brushing your teeth. And as you observe the child becoming more confident and skilled in brushing their teeth, and not a minute past that moment, right? Like you start weaning yourself off of it because, of course, dental hygiene is very important, but we also want to empower them in care of their own selves.
Awesome. Jana, we also had a question about, so it sounds like maybe it'd be helpful to talk a little bit more about this process that families can go through in terms of not keeping all of the beautiful work that the children do, because I do think, if it's not done respectfully, the child can kind of come away with, and so this is a teacher saying, a child came in and said that their parent threw away all of their treasures and that was upsetting to them. So I wonder if you could just take us through those steps one more time so we can avoid that scenario.
Sure. So we're not going to burn everything down. We're not making any drastic changes tonight when we get off. Please don't start a bonfire in your backyard with the tubs and tubs of artwork that you have from your children. We're just going to have a different mindset. So you're still going to engage with the artwork. And if it's something that you're really attached to, your child is really attached to, I'm not forbidding you from keeping it. Keep everything you want. I don't care. But what I am saying is that you're not obligated to. One time I mentioned this at a parent meeting, and this is the reason that I brought it up tonight. I had a mother who burst into tears. She was like, I was stressed out. I don't have any more room for boxes of my child's art. And I thought that I was a bad parent if I didn't keep it all. And I was like, no, you just start having different conversations. Children, we show people what to value, right? Now in Montessori schools are different from project and play-based schools because the curriculum might be around what is going on. But and what we generally do in Montessori schools is we just ask more questions so that it's about the relationship that you're having with the child about the artwork. So we refrain from praise, right? So you can work yourself out of that. So instead of saying, that's great, or that's beautiful, you can just say, oh my goodness, look at that. Tell me what you think of it. Tell me the story of your work. So you're asking them for feedback, or if you are making statements, it's not a value judgment. This is good, this is bad, this is beautiful, this is ugly. It's a discussion about the art that is in front of you, much like you would discuss art if you were in a museum. So you're asking, oh my goodness, I see so many primary colors in here. Thank you for showing me that. Right? You don't have to commit to keeping it in the box forever. Now, if you're backed into if you have established a habit where you keep everything, then what you might want to do is one day you say, oh my goodness, it's the time of year where we go through our artwork and decide which things we want to keep and which things we want to recycle. Recycling is really important too. Right? So then you get it out together. You could do things like make a collage with, of pictures, and you could make a picture of the things that there's so many ways that you can document the work that you have, and you can just establish this annual review of the things that they've collected, the artifacts that they've collected over the year. And they can say, we're going to whittle this down and we're going to take 12, and that'll be one for each month. Which ones do you want to focus on, or which ones stand out to you, or whatever. So it's a process. And then, you're just less and less saying that's beautiful, that's this, that, you're not making judgment values. You're just commenting on the process. That's what I would say. Is that helpful?
Yep, I think so. We've got a couple more in here. So, all right, this is actually, Janet, we gotta think about this one. How do you encourage children to put their materials back on the shelf, especially if the child is just not following the modeling that the parent is offering?
Okay, well, it depends on the age of the child. If it's a toddler, you can forget it. You don't need to worry about that. They don't have developed brains to they're like, that's going to be something that will require just doing it with them for a long time, like maybe a year. And then when they get to 3 to 6, it becomes part of what they do what they do in the classroom from every day, because it's easier for us to help establish that, because there are, 30, I had 50 one year, people in the classroom. You can't leave things out. So one of the things, if you're making a change, and I don't know how old the child is that you're talking about, but if you're making a change from a pattern that you've established in the past, you can just say, oh my goodness, I learned some new things, and they're going to be so helpful for us. And you can always throw school under the bus. Just like at school, when you're finished, you put your work away. We're doing the same thing at home. That way we make sure everything is where it goes. We can all find it when we need it, and we're going to protect it so it doesn't get kicked or stepped on. And, there's a sequence of activities. So it just could be some reminders about that for a while at first, because, at home, they're used to things being different. And so it might take a while for them to believe that you are doing the thing that you were saying that you were doing. And so it might take you working with them as well and doing a lot of reminders. And then if there's additional resistance as you go along, remember that it takes a while to establish a new pattern or habit. You can start having more serious conversations. And say, you can do at the end, I've noticed that this was left out and it needs to be put back on the shelf. We can do this next thing after that's put away, right? So that has to be done before this is done. If they're like looking at you like you're from a strange planet, they don't know who you are and why are you talking to them about this, then you can also say, you know what, you can put it away or I can put it away. And then if they don't do it, then you just put it away. If they say, do it with me, it can be okay, but you match their speed, right? So that they're not just sitting there not doing it, but they have one block in their hand or whatever it is. And you're doing that. So you do it with them. And then if it were continuing and the child were older, I would have the conversation again. I would say, okay, here's the deal. At this house, when we get things out, we put it away. And what I'm noticing is that that's not put away. I'm going to pick it up. But before you can have it back out, I need to know and trust that when you get something out, you're going to put it away. So we'll have to have a conversation. And then I would just put it away, and I wouldn't be like all shaking my head, and I wouldn't be all having stink eye or anything like that. I would genuinely do it. And then when they're like, hey, I want those blocks. And you're like, oh yeah, okay, cool. Let's have a little talk about that first. I need to know and trust that when you have this out, you're going to put it away. Because in this house, when we get things out, we put them away. And so it can become more and more like that. If you put it away and the child never asks for it again, they're not connected to that activity. And they left it out because they're over it. They don't really care about it anyway. So you can donate that to people who might be more interested in it. And you could see if maybe, I don't know, Dr. Amy, if this is allowed, but if it's something that's, safe and appropriate, they could donate it to the aftercare program at their, see if somebody at the school wants it, if they want to rotate it in, or find there are many people in communities who could take that work. Is that helpful?
Yeah, that's great.